And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough. Yeah.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
We're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Well, we've got news. We've got big time news. Tennessee announces 3 new coaching hires and seems to hide another couple of them. We shall discuss with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Wednesdays mean Jimmy Himes, so we always look forward to that. Again, we'll talk staff moves. Also, Tennessee's program or Alabama's program, which is the better program? Well, after the hirings that were made earlier this week, I'm going to have to lean towards Tennessee. Caleb Calhoun is going to try to convince me otherwise. This day in Tennessee sports history coming up. Which major coach on campus would you fire if you had to pick one? I'm talking about Tony Vitello, Josh Heupel, Rick Barnes, Kim Caldwell. Stat of the day, SEC Big Ten meeting expectations with Jimmy Himes. They're going to put this thing together like the ALNL. I'll go ahead and tell you that's what's going to happen. They're also probably going to expand to a 16-team college football playoff. To me, that means if you don't make the playoff, you're on the hot seat in year number 2. So we'll discuss that with Jimmy Himes as well. And the gap between the men's and women's basketball national championship odds are shrinking per on 3. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dave?
Never better. Give me a tease on those odds moving forward, because I know you dug those up right before the show.
Let's just say the odds on the women's basketball program have shrunk nearly 500%.
500%?
Yes.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Okay, so we will get to that and more. We'll get to today's tough question, and that is brought to you by our title sponsor, Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Let's get going with today's tough question, represented by Banks and Jones.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb, I kind of messed up the element. Do we want to do staff moves off the top? We can switch this up if you would like.
Yeah, let's do staff moves off the top and play a little hot or cold.
Okay, a little hot or cold. I apologize. We'll get to today's tough question here momentarily. It is hot or cold right now. It's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Hot or cold now.
Where do you stand? Hot or cold? Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Integrity matters. 50 years in East Tennessee. cityheatandair.com. On Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb, we're going to play hot or cold with the coaching moves that were made. Let's start with this one that I know is going to prickle some feathers. Is that how you say that?
Prickle some feathers.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's how you say that or not. Extending Willie Martinez through 2027, giving him what is essentially 3 more years on his deal. Is that right?
No, 2 more, because it's January of 2027.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I'm cold on that, and I'm even more cold because of the fact that it seemed as if Tennessee just tried to hide it. This was obtained by the News Sentinel through an open records request, the fact that Martinez was extended. Caleb, that tells me that Tennessee wasn't crazy about it and then might have been making a move for somebody else and ended up stuck with Martinez. Is that too conspiracy theorist for you?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I want to bring up something. I want to address a couple of things about this, because the reason I'm cold on it is that I think Willie Martinez, let's call it what he is, Dave. He's not a secondary coach. That's his title. He's a safeties coach who recruits. For those who want to tout the cornerback play at Tennessee, which has been significantly better than the safety play, even though the secondary has struggled throughout the 4 years Josh Heupel's been there. Guys, Tim Banks handles the cornerbacks. He's coaching the cornerbacks on a day-to-day basis. Willie Martinez is just coaching the safeties. I think, Dave, you and I can both agree the cornerback play has been significantly better than the safety play over the last 4 years at Tennessee.
Yeah, no question about it. And Martinez is one of those guys that has long made his reputation in the SEC by doing what? That would be by recruiting. And I'm not sure and I think this just comes with age. I don't want to go cover 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds like I used to in my 30s. I'm 50 years old. I'm a man. I mean, I just have trouble believing that at this age, and I think he's about the same age, you're as fervent about covering 17-year-olds as you were in your mid-30s.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Is that ageist of me?
That you're not as energetic about
no, that I question his desire like he used to be in his 30s.
No, which is why he didn't get a pay raise. I think they know that, which is why he's collected a check. I mean, it's what you tell me about Jerry Green all the time. Do you think this is a golden parachute job for him? I mean, it's possible.
Probably. David, we'll get to promoting Coach Chop here in a moment. Please hit that like and subscribe button. And Kelly, you're right. It is ruffle feathers, so that's my bad. But thanks for listening. All right, so let's move on. Hot or Cold brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, extending Kurt Schmidt, the strength coach, through 2026.
Dave, I'm interested where you're going to go on this, and I'm going to say this up front. I'm very sympathetic to Kurt Schmidt's job. He's got to keep this team conditioned and healthy amidst a very difficult system they run with the tempo. However, outside of 2022, where the offensive line stayed fully healthy throughout the year, I can't say he's met the moment. And I just go back to the mishandling of the Cooper Mays situation, which, like, I don't have to talk about what we know on internally. We don't have to go there. I can just go to, he had a hernia that he had in April that he had surgery on in June, even though he took part in spring practice when he clearly seemed to have it in April. And then we know, because it was public, Josh Heupel says we anticipate Cooper Mays out there against Florida, and the Cooper Mays doesn't play against Florida. So just the mishandling from the strength and conditioning coach of that is something that makes me get a red flag with Kurt Schmidt. But then there's also, and I want to know your thoughts about this. Yeah, I mean, Brew McCoy's injury, Hendon Hooker's injury, those things aren't his fault. Brew McCoy losing a step, though, and his lack of return to full strength this past year, when we kept hearing he was 100%.
I think you're giving strength coaches too much credit. I think they're more counselors than doctors. Like, you want to go home and quit and go to mommy, let's talk about it. I was thinking about soft tissue injuries, and the only one that came up was Keenan Pili. Right off the top of my head, I mean, to me, that's a guy who's mentioned too. I mean, that's a guy who's more injury prone. I will say I'm warm on this, or I'm hot on this. Keep him. David says lukewarm. David wanted to go back to Willie Martinez for a moment. Let's give Martinez credit. He did help develop Will Brooks into an all SEC top safety.
Okay, hold on. I mean,
you have to give him credit.
I think Will Brooks, as a walk-on, is your, I hate to go. He's your stereotypical gym rat smart guy that knows where to be on the field.
Caucasian.
And that plays well when Jermon McCoy and Ricky Gibson are able to lock down receivers.
Okay, that's fair. I'll give you that. But you have to give him some credit. Will you give him some credit?
No, because I think the indictment is that some of the other scholarship safeties couldn't get into the starting lineup because he couldn't coach them up.
Okay. Hot or Cold brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. So we're cold on Willie Martinez. I'm hot on Kurt Schmidt.
You could sell me on Kurt Schmidt. You could sell me on Kurt Schmidt, but I'm definitely cold on Willie Martinez. Neither of them got a pay raise.
All right. David's saying like and subscribe. Yes, we greatly appreciate that. John Bonamago as special teams assistant. Heck, I mean, I mean,
So
my unit's not working, and I'm going to have to call City Heating and Air Conditioning. 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Yes, I accidentally said my unit's not working, but Caleb, I don't know. I mean, Bonamago. I mean,
I didn't know much about John Bonamago until I looked him up last night. And Dave, this dude was respected throughout NFL circles as a special teams genius. Okay, he was.
Well, tell me about that. Brought to you by City Heating and Air.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Tell me about John Bonnaroo.
Bonnaroo. Did you just say John Bonnaroo?
That's his new name. Johnny
That's pretty
Bonnaroo
solid.
is his new name.
Wherever he has gone, basically teams had big turnarounds, and they typically had them with help through special teams. And I'm talking about 1999 when he went to the Jags. They had the best record in the NFL that year. 2006 when he went to the Saints. They got their first ever first-round bye in the playoffs. Now, you can point out they signed Drew Brees. That is true.
Yeah, that was a bit of a difference maker.
But I can point out.
You can point out.
I can point out that they had one of the best punt return games in the NFL that year because of Reggie Bush, and that was significant. 2 years later, he goes to the Dolphins. The Dolphins were 1-15 in 2007. They make the playoffs in 2008, partially because they were averaging 11 yards per punt return. And for those of you who don't know, averaging double-digit yards per punt return in the NFL is an insane stat. That's really, really, really hard to do. Then later, he goes to the Detroit Lions, and they get a home playoff game in 2014, and they get help through special teams. I'm saying he has had success everywhere. And of course, then as a senior coaching assistant, he was with the Rams, and they went and won the Super Bowl in 2021. Again, through help from special teams. Now, what really stands out is he was a head coach at Central Michigan. By the way, that's where Butch Jones was the head coach back in the day. He didn't have success as a head coach, but he did make 3 straight bowl games before he went 1-11. So he's not head coaching material. But this dude is a revered special teams coordinator. I don't know why he took the Tennessee job. He's coming out of retirement to do it. So Josh Heupel clearly threw some cash at this hire. That's showing me that the most important thing with this hire, he wants to make special teams an edge, like a huge advantage for Tennessee.
Okay, well, you fixed my unit. I'll say I'm hot on that one. Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, but you had to sell me on it. I mean, to me, it just kind of looks like hey, Knoxville's a great place to retire sort of hire, but that's fine. I'll go with you. Evan Crabtree gets promoted to special teams coordinator. Again, you help me with this one. This one's not doing a lot for me. Then we'll get to Chop.
I am probably cold on this one, but I can be swayed. Particularly since you hired John Bonamago, why do you have 2 special teams guys? Like, John Bonamago is the more seasoned guy. Why do you have him as the assistant with Evan Crabtree as the special teams coordinator?
Now, here's the other question that I asked. That's an interesting point, David. Boo Carter will be an All-American.
Yes, working with Boo Carter.
Yeah, I think working with him may be a factor. That's a really good point, more so than retiring in North Knoxville, God's country. I don't understand, and I've reached out to the SEC and UT this morning. I don't understand how many coaches you're technically allowed to have on staff nowadays. There used to be a rule. It was either 8 or 9, and I have looked and looked and looked because now they're counting the strength coach as one, which they didn't used to count. Now analysts don't count, but really in this day and age of NIL, I know that applies to athletes, but couldn't it apply to coaches? I mean, how can you tell somebody how can you tell a company? I mean, Caleb, nobody could come to us and say Off the Hook Sports is prepared to hire 20 more people. We'll just let you hire 8.
No.
That's not legal. So I never thought that rule should have been in place in the first place. I understand why it's there because you don't want Tennessee having 50 coaches and Idaho having 2. I mean, I understand why it's there, but I just think that rule's dead. I think Nick Saban helped kill it by having analysts out there.
Yeah, I mean, well, Nick Saban, this is kind of a rule Nick Saban's been fighting for. Nick Saban, on principle, had such opposition to the coaching limitations, and he brought up the math. He was like, no one, like, if you think about the on-field assistants, football coaches with the regulations are handling more people per assistant than any other sport by far. So I think the cap technically for on-field assistants is 11 now. Or no, it's 10. You can have 10 on-field assistants.
Okay.
So with that, they've added one here, which we'll get to in a second. But I think Bonamego is going to be an all-field role. Now, one thing Evan Crabtree does do, I'll say this, Dave. Here's what's a little bit out of the box on Evan Crabtree. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Evan Crabtree was a long snapper. His focus as a special teams analyst has been on long snapping and making sure that the long snapping part of the kicking game is effective. For those of you who hold on, we'll get to Coach Chop.
Sorry.
Hold on.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to do that. Go ahead.
For those of you
Can't take it down.
well, it's still showing, but
I can't take it down. Take it down.
Boomer. Anyways, for those of you who don't know, long snapping is half of field goal kicking. It's half the advantage. And I can tell you, it's good long snapping is as important to good field goal kicking as the field goal kicker himself. And half a reason a field goal kicker looks like he's not good or good is because he has a good or bad long snapper. You're seeing that with Justin Tucker. I'm not trying to get to his own personal issues right now because they look pretty bad. But Justin Tucker,
he's the massage punter, right?
Yes, the massage one. Justin Tucker was the greatest kicker
right inside the 20-yard line.
Justin Tucker was the greatest kicker of all time when Morgan Cox was his long snapper. Morgan Cox left, and everybody's been wondering what exactly happened to his collapse. It literally happened the year Morgan Cox left. And by the way, when Morgan Cox was at Tennessee, Daniel Lincoln was an All-American kicker.
Yep. Okay. Can you pull up Lavorne Harbin's bio on UT? This to me is a little bit troubling. He's been an analyst. He's been at UT for a couple of years. He's been very involved in their recruiting. And here's what his bio looks like at the University of Tennessee. Can we?
Oh yeah, I know.
Let's go ahead and pull that up if we don't mind sharing that with here, because this was the one that I was probably most hot on. Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, and they don't even have his title filled out. There's a part of me that says, young guy gets a shot. He's making money now, so he's going to stay around. He's going to grow, and he's got Arian Carter, and he's going to have a fantastic first year. But there's another part of me that says, oh, he's going to have all that, and it's almost as if he's set up not to fail because he's an elite recruiter. I mean, that to me is really kind of troubling. It feels like a Butch Jones hire. And I'm not going to go hot or cold on this because I'm honestly 50-50 split. And I know some of you online would like to share your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. You could probably sway me. But this feels like it could go either direction. This could be you look back and you say, oh, that guy was purely hired as a recruiter. Or you look back and say that was a great young coach that got his start at Tennessee.
Lavorne Harbin is a steal for Tennessee in this way. Here's what he brings to the table. Talent evaluation.
Okay. I'll give you that.
Here, for those who don't know, Lavorne Harbin was the director of recruiting at Auburn in 2019 and 2020. And he's been at Auburn. He's had multiple stops at Auburn. So he has plenty of experience recruiting. His track record otherwise has been at Louisiana, Georgia Southern, and he spent 7 years at the HBCU level at Tuskegee. I've actually covered a little bit of HBCU football, interestingly enough, nowadays. For those who don't know, back when college football was segregated, like HBCUs were like literally where the pipeline was for the AFL back in the 60s. They all looked at the HBCU schools with Grambling and Southern, and that's where Doug Williams came out of, those type of guys. Nowadays, obviously, those guys all go to the bigger schools, but the HBCUs...
Why? What changed?
Integration.
Yeah, I'm joking. Go ahead.
But when you're at the HBCUs, talent evaluation is crucial. You are recruiting kids that are teammates of the 5 stars that could never play at the SEC level or even at the FBS level or maybe even the FCS level sometimes, whether they're FCS. You have to meticulously evaluate these guys. And the evaluation process is so much harder at that level. And he did it for 7-8 years at Tuskegee, which is a really hard thing to do. On top of that, he was at Georgia Southern before it was a Division I program. So he had to do it there where it's really hard. Now, Louisiana, I don't think the evaluation process, even at if it's a smaller school in Louisiana Tech, Lafayette, I still don't think the evaluation process is good. You just go find the guys LSU's not recruiting, and you say, let me go get those guys. But
now, if I'm having a senior moment, I apologize. Were we having this conversation on the show or privately, or was I having it with someone else that told me that the best attribute any coach can have, especially in football, is talent evaluation? I had a coach.
We didn't talk about that, but that is an interesting. That is an interesting attribute.
Well, I mean, let's look at Philip Fulmer. Would you say great offensive mind? Would you say great recruiter? Or in retrospect, would you say great talent evaluator? Because he didn't have a lot of misses other than off-field issues. He didn't have a lot of misses.
I think the reason it's hard for somebody like Philip Fulmer is when he was at his peak, he had his pick of the litter of elite talent. And when you're recruiting at the elite level, Dave, you know this, it's really hard to miss on those guys. I mean, again, I've told you this, like I could get I bet you Quincy right now at 8 months could tell that's a good football player right there for some of these 5 stars. Well, I just don't think it's that hard.
Okay, but you're making the easy ones. It's I call it the everywhere, somewhere, nowhere guys. You're saying that Quincy could tell the difference between the nowhere guys and the anywhere guys. Well, of course he could. It's the somewhere guys that are high 2 stars that should be low 4 stars that I think are a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, but the only ones I think Fulmer, like Fulmer missed on a lot of those too. And we're forgetting this. In the second half of his career, he missed on quite a few 5 stars.
No, let's not count the last 3 or 4 years.
I'm not going the last 3 or 4 years. Okay. 2002, Brandon Jeffries, gigantic whiff.
Okay, I'm telling you though, Caleb, those guys had talent when they showed up. Some had attitude issues. I could go up and down the list. Some had attitude issues because of what was going on at the program, but most of those guys, when they showed up, they could play.
I think talent
evaluation. I would include Jeffries in that too, as I would say in retrospect, he was a solid 3-star.
I think talent evaluation is less of an important attribute if you're recruiting at the highest level. I don't think. Yeah. Again, what this is saying is Tennessee's probably not going to recruit at the Georgia level. They're just a step below. So talent evaluation comes in a little bit more importantly. They got to identify guys that other people can't identify. And that's what Coach Chop, I think, is going to be great at, which is he's going to find guys that basically Rodney Garner's going to get the superstars on the defensive line. Coach Chop's going to get the undervalued guys on the defensive line. Coach Chop's the guy who'll find Byron Young. Put it that way. Rodney Garner's not going to go find Byron Young.
Right. Fulmer was a great recruiter, says Vols win. Cutcliffe was a great player evaluator. Thanks for the comments in the chat. Now, David, you and I are going to disagree a little bit on this next point. Demetrius Morley stunk is the nice way to say it. The guy had physical ability. He had some issues from the neck up as far as processing, just like we talk about some quarterbacks have issues. At the safety position, you've got to be able. But as far as talent and running around, he could do that.
Yeah, and also it got harder for him because when Lean and Monty Kiffin got there, he just couldn't. Monty requires a lot more processing out of his safeties than John Chavis did. So
I give a lot of those guys a little bit of a pass, even so far as New Keith Richardson and Mike Edwards. I mean, what if they just shown up at 17, 18 years old with more institutional control, with more discipline?
Dave, I've done stupid things in my life. I never had it in my mind to go rob a convenience store for fun, okay? Like, I'm sorry. That is a level of dumbness that, like, I don't care how little what institutional control do you need? How about don't rob a convenience store when you have a football scholarship? No, Nukies Richardson and Mike Edwards are 2 of the dumbest human beings in the history of dumb.
I'll give you that.
I mean, that's one of the dumbest mistakes I've ever seen.
Let me ask you this. What is more impressive on the dumb standard? Is it robbing a convenience store of which you have to remember that is your biggest donor. It's a Pilot store. Okay. Let's not forget that part. And you end up stealing a cheeseburger. And okay, or New Keith Richardson was the only player I know that straddled a punt return twice in the same season. It let it go between his, like, straddled it and had to jump out of the way like he was playing dodgeball.
The former's dumber because the latter is not being able to think on your feet.
Okay.
You have on the former, on robbing a convenience store, you have to plan to be stupid. You have to plan out, hey, let's go be real dumb today and rob a convenience store and throw away a scholarship when I'm an NFL caliber wide receiver and I can make millions for my family. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's like, I'm talking
Okay, so
about.
David brings up, and then we're going to get back on topic a little bit. David brings up Derrick Rogers. Yes, he was a waste, but that was his fault. That guy physically could play. Do you doubt that Derrick Rogers could play?
No, he could absolutely play. He actually got signed by the NFL, to his credit, by the Colts. So there's like again, yeah, Derrick Rogers, that was stupid. James Banks' laziness was stupid. He threw away a career. These guys are stupid. Losing your temper and hitting somebody and getting kicked off the team is stupid. But planning out to rob a convenience store is the dumbest thing I think anyone's ever done as a player at a school.
Especially your biggest donor. I mean, there's a Rocky Top Market right up the road. Just go to the Rocky Top Market instead of the Pilot. All that's holy. I mean, do you not know that Pilot is your... I guess he didn't know. I mean, I don't know. Seems odd to me. Let's set the poll question as this. What move do you like the most? Or what move do you like the least? You can phrase it however you would like to. It's time for today's tough question, and it's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb, give me the poll question before I get to today's tough question.
The poll question is going to be, which staff move do you like the most? Coach Chop, Evan Crabtree, John Bonamega, or I'll just say keeping Willie Martinez and Kurt Schmidt.
It's not going to be that one. Derek says LaMarcus Coker. Now, we're not trying to pull out the biggest bust of all time, because then we'd have to talk about Dolly Parton. But we're talking about...
I got that.
Okay, I'm trying to think of a guy that just showed up and couldn't play. Well, I mean, Philip used to tell me about him, and he'd run him off.
But like, LaMarcus Coker could play.
Yeah, he played. Went to play at Oregon, and he played some in the NFL.
No, that was Ontario Smith who played at Oregon.
Oh, Ontario Smith.
LaMarcus Coker was the speedy back that complemented Hardesty and Foster in 2006 and 2007, and he got kicked off for, I think, weed, which, again, stupid, dumb, but that's like, it's actually still not as dumb as robbing a convenience store.
Yeah, and when you're just kicked off for weed, it means there was something else going on.
That's true.
Because I had a player tell me, it may have actually been the player you mentioned earlier, said such and such got kicked off after failing 2 drug tests for weed. He said, I must have failed 34, but I started. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones. Tennessee or Bama, which is the better program, Caleb? Obviously, most people would say Alabama. There's a reason that this is today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones.
Yes. My criteria is theoretically the same criteria as Josh Pate's version of a program, which is this. Of over a 4-year rolling period, have you had stability? What has your success been like? And what has your recruiting been like? And what has your NFL draft talent been like? Now, on that paper, Alabama should have Tennessee pretty beat, right?
Yes.
But here's the problem. They have Tennessee pretty beat from the work done by their previous head coach, Nick Saban. who is no longer there. To this point, if I were a buyer in the stock market and programs were stock, I think I'd invest in Tennessee before Alabama. Because look, I'm
but you wouldn't, because they made the college football playoff and Alabama didn't. What about if you're a coach?
That's what I mean. I would invest in Tennessee because they made the college football playoff.
Okay, but you're buying them higher.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Well, I think Alabama's stock would still be higher right now, even though Tennessee made the playoff because of the 4-year rolling period. I mean, they still have better odds to win the national title next year than Tennessee.
Okay, so let me ask you 2 questions. Number 1, who will win more games in the next 4 years?
Josh Heupel or Kalen DeBoer?
Yes. Or let's just say whoever Tennessee's coach is or whoever Alabama's coach is.
Whoever Tennessee's coach is, for one big reason, which is that Tennessee plays an easier schedule over the next 4 years.
Okay. You're now Coach Caleb, and you're going to move your family all over the United States to chase the best coaching job you can. And you've got a head coaching offer at the University of Alabama, University of Tennessee. What are you taking?
Oh, God, that's the easiest question in the world. I'm taking the Tennessee job for like 3 reasons. I don't even want to be the second guy following Nick Saban. But I actually also think I'd rather live in Knoxville than Tuscaloosa. And 3, and I'll be honest with you on this, I think I'll get more support from the boosters at Tennessee than Alabama. I think the boosters at Alabama are much more incompetent than we realize. I don't think they're the brightest bulbs in the box, guys. Not that Tennessee has bright boosters, but I think Alabama's boosters are. Look, let's call it, most of these boosters, they're multimillionaires, billionaires who were born into daddy's money, and they think they're smart because daddy gave them $1 billion. That's your typical booster to a college program, right?
Yeah, but you know what Tennessee's boosters remind me of? Do you remember that scene from Batman where the Joker said, if it's like a dog chasing a car, what's the dog going to do when he catches the car?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what are you going to do? It feels like some of Tennessee's boosters like chasing the dream more than sustaining the dream. And
they do.
And that, that may change, but you've ripped the Haslam family a lot, and fairly so, but I think you would agree that Big Jim was a solidifying financial force, and you had that to lean on.
Yes, I haven't ripped the family. I've ripped Jimmy.
Right.
So,
but they're not going to have that for much longer because Big Jim's, I think, 92 years old. So I think that may be a bigger concern right now than whether or not Josh Heupel's the right coach, whether or not Danny White's the right AD, is what's Tennessee's booster base going to look like in just, I hope Big Jim lives to be Methuselah's age, but in 5 to 10 years, what's it going to look like?
Well, that's the question. And we don't know yet, but we know, I know this much. I know the fights Greg Byrne is having with his boosters in Tuscaloosa. He's had some big fights with them to try to get them to cough up the money. And I also know that's one of the reasons.
NIL money for the most part?
Yeah, NIL money. Okay, guys, for those who don't know and again, I have connections down there. For those who don't know the Alabama football culture, it's as bad as the Notre Dame football culture. They genuinely think down there, and this includes the boosters, that it's a privilege to be down here in Alabama, and you should be grateful for what we're doing for you at Alabama. Like they actually think that way. They can't process the fact that you have to negotiate to get athletes. And I'm talking about, even, and Dave, you'll appreciate this, even before NIL. Even before NIL, to get 5-star athletes, you had to negotiate. You had to sell something, right? Beyond just our program is amazing.
You had to pay for them.
You had to promise them an NFL future. You had to promise you get into the NFL.
You had to pay for them. I mean, come on. They were getting paid before NIL.
Yes, they were. But here's what I mean by this. Alabama,
better.
Let me just put it out this way. Alabama thinks Alabama boosters think those number 1 recruiting classes, they think those players committed to Alabama and not Nick Saban. They think that in their mind, that those players committed to Alabama and not Nick Saban.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Could Nick Saban have done the same thing at Tennessee as he did at Alabama? Today's Tough Question brought to you by Banks & Jones. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott. All right, how many national titles did Nick Saban win at Alabama?
6.
Would he have done the same at Tennessee?
I'll give him 5. I think Tennessee's
That's
a.
fair. They do get the kick 6, or how does that happen?
Well, I think actually, okay, let me back up real quick. Given the
You said
state,
it's a better program. I don't understand how you can
no,
go.
I think at that time Alabama was the better program. At that time, Alabama was the better program. One, Tennessee was being run by Jimmy Haslam, like literally run. He was running the school like a feudal lord. And
Let's not forget Jimmy Johns was selling cocaine in the Alabama parking lot.
oh, but that's before. Yes, but Nick Saban, like, look, I think Nick Saban. I'm conflicted on this. All things being equal, and I mean, if you have equally competent administrators and boosters and whatever, I think that Alabama is a slightly better job than Tennessee in the Nick Saban era because Alabama has, Dave, we got to be honest, it has better talent in the state, significantly better talent in the state of Alabama than Tennessee.
Okay, but you know what Tennessee's coaches would say is you draw 100 or it's a 50-mile circle or 150-mile circle, and they consider Charlotte and Atlanta be in state.
Yes, but the problem is they're competing with Georgia for the Atlanta talent. Charlotte does not rival Birmingham. It just doesn't, guys. So sorry about that. And Nashville doesn't rival Birmingham. Alabama can just go to Birmingham and North Alabama and down to Mobile, and they are the primary school for everybody around there. Not to mention, yes, you got Auburn, but Auburn competes to a lesser degree. I mean, Alabama and for the record, you draw that 150-mile radius, Alabama can go to Atlanta just as easily as Tennessee can. They are equally connected to Atlanta.
Well, that's true. You know what's funny is you get into the chicken or the egg discussion, okay? Because you said Charlotte, not as much talent as Birmingham. Well, I would argue there's as much talent walking the halls in Charlotte, but they weren't raised to love football. And when they went out there for that first 2 days practice when they were 13 years old, they were like, to hell with this. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, they went to basketball.
Right. And it's funny how you say that. So there's a more fervent, even than Atlanta.
I think that's very true. That's what killed football in the Northeast, by the way. I think New York has a plethora of what could be elite athletes, but they all play basketball or baseball now. And
I mean, anybody that covered Allen Iverson will tell you that his best sport by far was football. And he was better than Ronald Curry and Michael Vick in the Virginia Beach area. They all played at the same time. Would you like to cover preps during that time?
That is true. That is crazy.
I mean, and Ronald Curry, for those that don't remember, was the #1 basketball player and like a top 5 football player.
Yeah, that's true. So basically, when they said Allen Iverson got that dog in him, Michael Vick's like, damn, I can't wait to kill that guy on the field. I'm sorry. But yeah, I think Alabama boost. Look, I'm sorry, but all things being equal, Saban still has a lot of success at Tennessee. But Dave, I think from that time period, Alabama's a slightly better job. But caveat, the SEC East was significantly easier than the SEC West during that time.
Okay, but that's what I was trying to get to, and I got misdirected. So, chicken or the egg? Is it Paul Bear Bryant brought football passion to the state of Alabama, or did it already have it, and that's why he wanted the job, and that's why Saban wanted the job, or did Saban want the job because of what Paul Bear Bryant did? You see what I'm saying?
Here's what happened. Yes, the passion preceded Paul Bear Bryant. The passion was actually brought by Wallace Wade and Frank Thomas in the 30s and the 40s. What made Alabama dynasty?
Big hurt.
Not that guy, but the other one. What made Alabama
my muscles, honey? Hey, look at his muscles. Have you seen that commercial with Frank Thomas in it?
I have not.
She goes, "Oh my goodness, is that Frank Thomas? He is so hot."
Here's the truth of the matter, and this is kind of something we have to bring up, Dave. Tennessee gets credit, and they deserve credit for leading the charge in this. But what they led the charge in hurt them compared to Alabama, because Tennessee led the charge for integration in the late 60s, and they deserve the credit. But once integration happened, that gave Alabama a much deeper crop of players to pick from in their state than Tennessee has in their state. Let's just call it what it is. And that really, in 1970, just so you know, guys, in 1970, Tennessee and Alabama, the series was tied. I think Alabama integrated like the next year. They won the next 11, and Tennessee hasn't called it to Alabama in the series since then.
New poll question: should Tennessee fans be anti-integration? No, we're not going to do that.
We're not going to do that.
We're very pro-integration here across the
board.
board.
We're not pro-segregation, guys.
Yes. But so there we go. Frank Thomas. That commercial is bizarre. Hey, is that Frank Thomas? Honey, he looks so good and big and buff. I wish you looked like that. What? Show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. And that was an interesting point. You've got people thinking on the message board. Hit that like and subscribe button. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer when it comes to Ford and Lincoln. And I will go ahead and tell you, when it comes to Ford and Lincoln, they have the selection that you need. They perfected the buying process, and they love supporting local businesses. They love supporting you, and they want you to feel good when you drive that car off the lot. There's special people at Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Kingston Pike and Parkside Drive. Give me 2 minutes. Then coming up, it'll be This Day in Tennessee Sports History, where we ask the tough questions. Which coach of the major ones, and let's make this the poll question so we can get an early fill during the break, which coach of the 4 major ones, and that would be women's basketball, men's basketball, baseball, and football, if you had to fire one, your Danny White, would you fire tomorrow? The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Again, broadcasting live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Ginger Power, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, portions of the program before we get to what could have been today's tough question, but it's pretty darn tough. And that is, which coach, if you had to fire one, would it be out of Tony Vitello, Josh Heupel, Rick Barnes, Kim Caldwell? Stay in Tennessee sports history and stat of the day coming up as well. As let's go ahead and dive into this day in Tennessee sports history. It's brought to you by the UPS store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. Link is right down below. Caleb, it is time for this day in Tennessee sports history. Are you okay there?
Yes, I am fine.
I was a little bit worried about you there. This day in Tennessee sports history is right now.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
This day in Tennessee sports history. What do you got, Caleb?
On this day in 1977, Tennessee beat fourth-ranked Alabama on the road in basketball 92-89. After beating second-ranked Kentucky earlier in the year, this marked the first time ever that Tennessee beat two top 5 teams on the road in the same season in basketball. It also clinched them the SEC regular season title that year. This was the peak of the Bernie and Ernie show. Bernard King, Ernie Grunfeld, they were together. They won the SEC regular season title, and it was a obviously legendary time in Tennessee basketball history during that period.
Very true. Portions of the program brought to you by Work Trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering. They have that process quick and easy. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, anything you need. If you're a contractor, need no Work Trucks, they absolutely have the trucks you need. And you can check out their entire inventory online, worktruckswithanxllc.com, worktruckswithanxllc.com. What the H?
What the H?
Wow, I've never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. Thanksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
You are Danny White. You have to fire one of your major coaches. Baseball manager / coach Tony Vitello, football coach Josh Heupel, basketball coach Rick Barnes, or women's basketball coach Kim Caldwell. This would have been a slam dunk, fire 3 and keep Heupel this time a year ago. Things certainly look different after the calendar has turned. So you have to fire one, Caleb. Make your argument for whom that might be.
So I understand everybody talking about the age factor to say Rick Barnes. I am of the mindset that in college coaching, it is high time we take the R. Kelly approach. No, I'm kidding. But I'm saying the album title that he gave to Aaliyah, which is Age Ain't Nothing But a Number. Which, by the way, he gave that title to Aaliyah for her album when she was 14 and he was 25, and then we found out they got married. Yeah, creepy. Anyways, I am saying we overrate age all the time in college basketball because you have no idea how long a coach is going to last. Yes, Barnes is 70. I still would fire Josh Heupel before Rick Barnes because I think this era of college basketball is conducive to Rick Barnes having a lot of success over the next 10 years that will surpass the success Josh Heupel is able to have in football over the next 10 years. I think the way Rick Barnes runs his program sets things up for him to have a lot more success in general. So I'm going Josh Heupel. I'd fire Josh Heupel because I'm not firing Tony Vitello. Tony Vitello just won a national title, and I'm not firing Kim Caldwell. I believe in her too much.
Vols win says Barnes would be gone. He gets closer and closer to the door after every inexcusable loss. There is that discussion, concern with Barnes that he gets there and he doesn't get it done. So it's not just the age thing. It's much more than that. I think this is a slam dunk easy. I think you have 3 programs that are in good shape and one that is in great shape. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Then it's Kim Caldwell. After 1 year, she's out the door. Like, February 20th, she's out the door. And the reason is because women's basketball doesn't make money at the University of Tennessee. Now, if you want to say, let's go back, Dave Serrano, the baseball coach at the time. Well, then you've got a debate because both of the programs would be average compared to where Kim Caldwell is now. But right now you have two programs, neither of which make money. They don't produce revenue, and one is elite, one is not. It's slam dunk Kim Caldwell.
Okay, well, then let me phrase it this way. If you're going by that, I understand what you're saying. But let me phrase it this way. You have to fire a coach. And yeah, great point by General Rosa. Is exactly what I was saying.
Keep talking to pretend that's not there.
Dave, you have to fire a coach. And you can't have a drop-off within the program after you fire the coach. The program cannot take a step back.
Well, that's not going to happen, though, because if you fired Vitello, nobody would want that job. If you fired Heupel, you didn't give him long enough. If you fired Caldwell, they're like, well, they're really not dedicated to women's basketball. Really, the only one.
Nope, you don't get to make excuses. No excuses. Well, play like a champion. You have to fire a coach and try to make
one. I think the only one that you could make a change and not have a significant drop-off is men's basketball.
Oh, see, I totally disagree. I think we are underrating how bad things can get in men's basketball because of how Mike Slive has elevated SEC basketball as a whole. But we just talked about it yesterday. Dave, Tennessee literally over a period of 15 years, they hired Wade Houston, Kevin O'Neal, Jerry Green, and Buzz Peterson.
Well, and really Elias pointed this out too. If you fired them, it's not like I was thinking in my mind Rick Barnes retires, but that's not retiring. You're firing him. So no, that's fair. That's a very fair point. David says I'd fire Barnes due to lack of meeting postseason expectations. Heupel is a quarterback away from a championship or championship appearance.
What do we mean a quarterback away? Like Heupel has Nico Iamaleava now, and he had Hendon Hooker in 2022. I mean, I don't think the quarterback. I don't think he's been picking the wrong quarterbacks. I think he's been messing up elsewhere, quite honestly. Such as
I do think he's been picking the wrong quarterback.
I think Nico's still a good fit for the system.
Well, I mean, we'll see, but you'd have to agree that he picked Milton over Hooker.
That was yes,
and I think he should have picked Nico over Milton in 2023, and he would have had a lot more run on him, a lot more experience.
Well,
so I think I would disagree with your premise that he's making the right decision on quarterbacks.
Maybe for the sake of 2024, you might be right. But Dave, let me ask you this question because we talk about Milton processing and how that was an issue. Are we sure Nico's not worse when it comes to specifically processing?
I don't think so. And here's why I say that. Because when he's got a decent pocket, he's been much better than Milton. Milton, to me, had a fleeting sort of style. He was ready to leave the pocket because he was such an elite athlete. And I'm sure that he trucked about 50,000 dudes in high school. Okay. I mean, I bet he was just, like Bo Jackson at the high school level. So I don't think Nico thinks I got to run first. I think there's a different mindset upstairs.
Well, I think Milton's problem was Joe Milton's biggest problem, though, was he refused to take advantage of his run first when he was there in 2023. He's such a good runner, but he wouldn't want to do it. If he did, he probably could have been an all-SEC player that year for
right.
Josh Heupel.
My theory on that has always been it was so beat into him to stay in the pocket. It was almost
they misused him.
Well, they either misused him, miscoached him, or something. I mean, that's fair. And I think you and I've talked about it. I hate doing cardio, and I would never go to the gym if I did cardio. And if you forced me to do it, I'm going to be disgruntled the whole time. I think he was kind of disgruntled the whole time, or maybe just confused.
Possibly, but this is where you say, hey, if first read's not there, take off. Just do the quick read. If you don't see it, go. I mean, just go guns blazing. But like what we're talking about here is we're speaking ourselves into it, Dave. Josh Heupel's the one who should go in terms of the actual quality of the coach at their respective sport. In terms of the quality of the coach at their respective sport.
As a businessman, being Danny White, I couldn't even dream of making that decision because of the financial repercussions.
Okay, but I'm saying in terms of who's the worst coach in their respective sport?
The worst coach in their respective sport based off resume would be Kim Caldwell.
But who do you think, based on not resume, but also projections.
At the end of the day, pelts on the wall.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, pelts on the wall. I don't think Rick Barnes is going to win a championship. I tend to think Josh Heupel will.
So you think Rick Barnes is the worst coach in their respective sports?
I know, and this is a discussion. That's why I don't want anybody to paint us as negative. I think this illustrates. I think this illustrates exactly what position Tennessee is in. I remember the late 90s thinking to myself, Tennessee's won a national championship. They've got Pat Summitt, the greatest coach ever. They're doing pretty good in basketball, even though they got a drunken head coach. And I was like, this is as good as it gets. This is arguably getting to that point. So this is actually a positive discussion.
Yeah, but if as good as it gets is your national championship is in baseball and not basketball or football, people are going to be upset about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you put this poll question up, would you rather have 10 baseball championships or 1 football championship?
Yeah, and everybody's going to say 1 football championship.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, getting the baseball championship for many Tennessee fans is checking something off a box. Like, all right, got another national title in one of the sports in the resume, and we're good here. Honestly.
Now, I will say I'm with David on this. And I wrote a column about this, about Heupel's offense. It was kind of like this. He took a gutted roster and made them competitive. He absolutely did. And let's not forget to give him credit for that. Maybe the next step is even more difficult, and we don't recognize that because you weren't an Alabama fan, you weren't a Georgia fan, but it took Georgia a couple years to get over the hump of Alabama, and it may take Tennessee 2 or 3 more years of being at a competitive level, but not an elite level. And that's not the end of the world.
But how about this? And you're right. Heupel's a great I still think he's a great X's and O's coach. I think his roster construction has not been good. Now, Dave, as a Cowboys fan, you were spoiled by Jimmy Johnson, where that was a head coach who knew how to construct a roster. Right? That was a head coach who knew how to construct
I think he's the best talent evaluator in the history of sports, and I think that he's the second best psychological manager behind Phil Jackson.
I could believe, and it's funny because they're both so different in how they coach too. Yeah. Because Phil Jackson is like Zen-like, and Jimmy Johnson is like, I hear players were scared to death of him on the Cowboys. But yeah, I think that Josh Heupel, the coach, is amazing. Josh Heupel, what you would call GM, I mean, he's like Bill Belichick level almost with Bill Belichick. His last few years in the Patriots and Bill Belichick, we found out great coach, terrible at building a roster, absolutely terrible at it.
Okay, so are you saying that you're questioning his roster building ability?
Yes, I'm significantly questioning Josh Heupel's roster building.
Do you think they were short on talent last year?
I think they started the wrong people. They mishandled the depth chart, which is part of roster building to me.
Okay. I'll go there with you. I think it's funny you bring up Belichick. What did he do that was so, I thought, innovative? He utilized, 2 tight ends look, which Heupel has done. I thought that was very innovative last year. And he also, he utilized the little bitty receivers that were quick and could get open in space. So, yeah, final on the poll question. What is it?
By the way, we got to give Charlie Weiss the credit for the 2 tight ends. He was the one who kind of came up with that.
Oh, yeah. I didn't mean overall credit. I just meant it fit the game at the right time.
Right. That's a good point.
All right. So what's our poll question?
Poll question is, if you had to, which of the 4 Vols major coaches would you fire if you had to pick one? Do you want the results?
Yeah, give me the results. Actually, first, let me tell you, because I'm excited for the results. Let me tell you about our friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Best spas right there in Athens. Best chemicals for your pool and spa right there in Athens. Stop by, mention Off the Hook Sports, get a free Off the Hook Sports prize and $500 off. All right, so what's our poll question? Answer, results.
All right. If you had to fire one of the 4 major coaches of the Vols, who would you pick? Rick Barnes is winning by an outright majority right now at 53%. Josh Heupel and Kim Caldwell are tied for second at 20%, and then Tony Vitello is 4th at 7%. So nobody's firing Tony Vitello. Well, one person's firing Tony Vitello. That person is probably just like, I don't like baseball. So
broadcasting from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. He'll go to trial. Trust me, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing? Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7.
Like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones. Banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Let's bring Jimmy Himes in here. We always appreciate his time on a Wednesday. Jimmy, how are you, sir?
Dave, I'm doing very well. Caleb, how are you?
Pretty good. How you doing, Jimmy?
Good.
Now, I know you've got some snow out there as we've got some snow. Are you going to have a bit of grandson time today? Because that's pretty good stuff.
Actually, no, because his mom is got snowed in, so she is at home with him. So no grandson today.
I got you. Well, tell us about how we can follow your work. You're doing a lot of fantastic stuff with Paige, and I saw where you've got some new stuff out recently.
Yeah, so on Full Disclosure Productions, you can go to YouTube. We've had at least 16 interviews that we've done. We also do a different podcast after ball games. You can find that at Full Disclosure as well. My interviews are on the Rewind on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and type in my name, you'll find all the interviews that we've done, and also doing some writing for you.
Yep. And we certainly appreciate that. And Jimmy, I'll ask you what our question was earlier. You probably heard it coming in. Tennessee's in great shape, so this is a positive conversation. But if you're Danny White and you had to fire one coach,
that's positive.
Well, I mean, it's a tough decision. Like when Pruitt was around, you'd be like that dodo bird. But I mean, this is a tough debate. So if you had to.
Why wouldn't you make it Donnie Tyndall, Derek Dooley, Jeremy Pruitt, and some other clown? Oh, man.
Dave Serrano?
Okay. Yeah. There you go. Okay. If I had to fire one, which I don't like the question.
No, I knew you wouldn't. You don't have to go there if you don't.
Okay. Well, all right. I would, if I had to, I'd go Rick Barnes. Why? Because he's 71 years old. And he's not going to be with you much longer. All the other coaches on your list will be there much longer. Tony Vitello, Kim Carr, they'll be around a lot longer because of their age than Rick Barnes. And I don't anticipate Rick Barnes coaching more than 2 or 3 more years, right? So I would, based on age discrimination, and I would get sued, I would go Rick Barnes.
There you go. All right. Let's get to 4 downs right now. We're going to dive into this SEC Big Ten meeting expectations. I'm telling you, they're going to turn this into the ALNL. Here we go.
Come on, guys, it's game time.
4 downs. Can you count? 4 downs. 1, 2, 3, 4. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. Banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Okay, so to get everybody caught up to date, the SEC and Big Ten are meeting in New Orleans. And no, it's not to have some of that fantastic etouffee that Jimmy grew up on. It is to discuss the future of college football. And I want to throw a couple things at you. We'll go with first down right now, Jimmy. And that is the notion of more home games in the college football playoff. You like that? Love that? Hate that?
So it would be first-round games to be hosted on campus.
Correct.
Logistically, I would favor it because I just don't think you can incorporate all the bowl games into this equation. And because of that logistical nightmare, I actually thought, I know Tennessee got their butt beat at Ohio State. That was a great scene. There were other great scenes. I can imagine Tennessee hosting a game at Neyland Stadium. What a great atmosphere that would be. So I would be in favor of hosting more playoff games on campus sites.
Yeah, the bowl to me, the bowls are the ex-wife, and the college football playoff is the new hot girlfriend. You just got to move on, Caleb. Thoughts?
Well, okay, so the Vols, they're talking about what they're talking about. This selection is maybe pushing home games into the second round, because one of the things they didn't like logistically last time was that they felt it didn't make sense to. One of the problems with this first playoff that we just had was playing a home game one weekend around Christmas, and then you play a bowl game around New Year's right after that. The problem is if you push it into the second round, the current bowls that are in the rotation for the playoff, some of them are going to have to be pushed out, and they don't want to be pushed out.
Jimmy, I was joking earlier, but I just really don't see how any traditional bowl feel survives in all this if it goes to 16 teams, excuse me.
How any traditional bowl survives? Well, they're going to have playoff games. So why wouldn't the Fiesta Bowl or the Sugar Bowl or the Cotton Bowl or Peach Bowl survive if they're hosting a quarterfinal or semifinal national championship game?
Well, they would only host a semi. They would only host
up a little bit. I said traditional bowl system, which would be filtered down. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, no, Caleb, what was your point?
They would only host, like what the SEC and Big Ten have been talking about. They might only host semifinal games at this point, meaning you would only have 2 of those bowl games a year hosting, and the other 4. I mean, let's just be honest. Who's going to watch a Fiesta Bowl game or a Sugar Bowl game or even a Rose Bowl game that's not part of the college football playoff when there's a 16-team playoff?
Well, the fans of those respective schools.
That's about it.
You're limiting your audience considerably. Yeah.
Significantly.
Yeah.
All right, second down, play-in games replace conference title games. This one rubs me the wrong way. Caleb, do you want to explain it for those that maybe don't understand?
Yeah, so this is, Jimmy, this is tied into one of the reports that's happening is the SEC and Big Ten are fighting to strong arm to get a certain number of automatic bids, like 4 per conference. And they also realized, like I warned everybody, that last year's conference title games were devalued and the networks were not happy about that. So they thought rather than have 1 and 2 play for the conference championship, how about we have 4 and 5 play a play-in game to get to the college football playoff instead during the weekend of conference championship?
So you would not have a conference championship game.
Right.
Okay. So who would be your conference champion?
The team that finishes first in the standings.
And if there's a tie?
Whatever tiebreakers they use they have tiebreakers to figure out who plays for the SEC title. So just whatever tiebreakers they use for the 1 seed. By the way, those teams would go to the college football playoff, so it wouldn't matter as much. Basically, the whole concept of a champion is devalued.
Well, and in the past, I mean, I remember Tennessee was in 1989 4-way tie for championship, so everybody got to celebrate. Everybody was happy. It was a participation. Well, it wasn't quite participation trophy, but that's probably what they would do if they're tied. They wouldn't go to tiebreaker. They'd just say, okay, we got co-champions. I'm actually intrigued by the play-in. I don't like giving an automatic 4 bids to the Big Ten or the SEC. I think they should earn it. I think there are years when the SEC would qualify for. I also think there are years where if they don't have 4 that qualify, they shouldn't get in. Same with the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten is more at risk with that than the SEC is. Because didn't the SEC have the 13th and 14th and 15th teams that could have gone in, right, this past year?
Right.
Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina. So the SEC is more apt to have that many. I don't like that many automatic. If you went to 3 for each, I'm okay with that. 4 to me is too many. But I am intrigued with the play-in for both the Big Ten and the SEC to have a play-in game to see who gets in. I think that would be more fair than just saying, okay, we're going to give 4 automatic bids to each conference.
Let's get to Third Down, brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Again, go to facebook.com, follow Sports Treasures TN. Do you think, Jimmy, that the Big Ten is using their television money as leverage against the SEC for auto bid? So I want to go a little bit deeper into this auto bid discussion because you alluded to something that really had me thinking. And that is, I wonder if the Big Ten sees what you see, and that is the SEC is going to get 4 every year. So we've got to guarantee ourselves, what do we have to offset that? We've got more television money. Do you think that helps them in the leverage and negotiations that are ongoing?
I do think it helps them. I don't think it should help them, but I do think it helps them. I don't think how much TV money you got should put an 8-4 team in the playoffs. So, but yeah, do I think they're leveraging it? Yes. Do I like the idea? No.
That, Dave just said that, and wow, Dave, that's one of the best takes I've ever heard someone come up with on the fly, honestly.
Good job, Dave.
Well, because if you read the ESPN Insider Report today,
breaking my losing streak. Go ahead.
Heather Dinich has a report today on ESPN, and if you read that report, the section about the auto bids, the SEC was certainly not as keen on it as the Big Ten, and that's intriguing. Now,
really,
yeah, they weren't as keen on it. The Big Ten was the one that were more keen on it. Funny enough,
getting 4 automatic qualifiers.
Okay. They were pushing it a lot harder.
Yeah. All right.
Now it's funny because some people are believing, people are really mad. And Jimmy, I'm sure you know this as well as anybody. I didn't think about this till yesterday, but everybody's getting mad at Tony Petitti or Greg Sankey. Let's be honest. We're absolving university presidents of blame if this goes awry, aren't we? Because Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey answer to the university presidents, don't they, in their conferences?
Yeah, they do. They do. I think what I have observed from presidents, and I'll speak only to the SEC spring meetings, which I've covered forever, all the athletic directors and coaches and Greg Sankey and all, they come up with all these things that they're going to do. And then at the very end of the meeting on Friday, they present it to the presidents and chancellors. And in most cases, they just rubber stamp it. So all they're doing is getting a presentation. This is what we ought to do. And they'll say, oh, okay, sounds good, boom. So they don't really have much input. All they do is say, yes, I'll agree. So, Caleb, I'm going to go with you on that one. I think that's exactly what we're having here. The presidents are kind of staying out of it until the very last minute when they have to make a decision based on recommendations from basically commissioners.
So 4th down, final down, and that is as simple as this. Will we one day see the Big Ten and SEC break away from college football, and will that essentially be the mega conference that Jimmy and I have been talking about for now, goodness, 24 years? Will that be the mega conference if you had to predict, Jimmy?
I'm going to say no. I think they're going to – I think they will remain SEC and Big Ten. I think there are advantages to doing that. And when you say doing that, I mean, you're talking about football only?
I don't even know.
Well, it certainly can't work for all the other sports.
Yeah, you're right.
So I'm going to say no. I think they want to continue to have a separate identity. I also think this, and I feel strongly about this, SEC football coaches, well, football coaches in general, they want to have somebody they can beat, right? They don't want to play 12 difficult games in a single season. They just don't want to do it. They want a Kent State, or they want a weak team, who Akron. They want to mix in some of those games so that they can have a better one-loss record. They do not want to go through the meat grinder playing a competent opponent every week. So because of that, if they kind of try to break away, they're going to allow other teams to be a part of that so they can fill out a schedule that allows them to win more games.
So going back to the AL-NL thing, you were a baseball fan before me. I was kind of late to the party. But did you feel like the AL and NL had individual identities, even though they were both a part of Major League Baseball?
I did think that. Now, they tried to merge that a little bit. In other words, they set up, and it wasn't, I don't know how many games a year, maybe 30 games a year where they would cross over. So the Yankees would play the Mets, Astros would play the Rangers at that time. So they would have crossover games like that so that fans could enjoy watching the other league play. But I did think there was a separation. And there was a time when I thought the Major League Baseball game had some substance to it. I enjoyed watching them. And there were some bragging rights. Now, that was in the 60s, 70s, 80s. That no longer exists in that regard. But I do think there's a little identification with each league. So, and I guess you're comparing it a little bit to the SEC and the Big Ten, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm shooting for. But there were rule differences that made it different in American League and National League, right?
The DH.
The DH.
Yeah, that's correct. So that was a part of it.
And you wouldn't suddenly take out punting like Caleb would suggest.
Oh no, I would take it. No, I don't think punting is a good strategy. I would take out field goal kicking, but
be interesting. Jimmy, are you endorsing no field goal kicking?
No, come on, Caleb.
Sorry. Jimmy, on this front, though, I did want to ask you this with this, because the thing that disturbs me about it is the SEC, and particularly the Big Ten, fighting for the 4 automatic bids, and then they're meeting this week. So basically, whatever the SEC and Big Ten decide at today's meeting is going to be what the 2026 playoff looks like. They strong arm everybody else.
Yeah. Agreed.
My problem with the auto bids, and I wanted to know your thoughts on this, is in their mind, and this is what Ross Dellinger reported on Sunday, if they can get the auto bids, then there will be more high marquee non-conference games, because losing a non-conference game to Ohio State won't hurt you, because all that matters is where you stand in your conference. But if all that matters is where you stand in your conference, that non-conference game has no marquee value to it, does it? Because it's not going to affect the playoff race at all, right?
Yeah, that's true. However they do it, I'm in favor of more marquee matchup games. I'm in favor of Texas going to Michigan, even Alabama going to Wisconsin. And I know Wisconsin wasn't all that good this year, but I like those kind of games. Heck, LSU played USC and UCLA. I like that. My concern was I thought this year the College Football Playoff Selection Committee didn't give a rat about strength of schedule. They just looked at one-loss record. And I thought that would discourage teams from playing more good non-conference games. It would also discourage the SEC from going from 8 conference games to 9, which I'm in favor of. I hope they go to 9. I'm not sure they'll do it. But I'm also reminded that this committee rotates out. You got 3 new members pretty much every year. So just because the committee this year didn't value strength of schedule, maybe next year's committee will put more stock in it. I don't know. But to your point, bottom line, I would like to see more good non-conference matchups. And I do think the SEC and the Big Ten are headed that way. I do think they want to play some non-conference games against each other, which I think would be more attractive for the most part. Look, there are some bottom dwellers in the SEC and the Big Ten. We know that. But I think if you had a matchup like you did in basketball, where the SEC played the ACC, I think if you did a matchup like that in football with the Big Ten and SEC, I think you could have some really, really attractive games.
Let's get into the college football playoff aspect of this. Again, the SEC and Big Ten are meeting in New Orleans to discuss some potential changes. You can bet your bottom dollar that expanding the playoff is going to be a big part of that. Brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. Again, they are East Tennessee's largest volume dealer when it comes to Ford and Lincoln on Parkside Drive and Kingston Pike. Check them out. They perfected the buying process. We'll dive into that because I think that a 16-team playoff means coaches are on the hot seat even sooner than before.
Like a blast from the past, the super dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford.
Jimmy, is it too strong of a statement to say if you don't make a 16-team college football playoff pretty quickly, you're on the hot seat? Because I look at the NFL, 32 teams, approximately 16 make the playoffs. If you don't make the playoffs, you're on the hot seat. I think in college football, if I'm a head coach, I do not want a 16-team college football playoff, even though I think it might be more inclusionary.
I think it depends on the school. If you're Alabama, if you're Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, yes, it puts more pressure on you to get in the playoffs. If you're South Carolina, I'm going to say no. I think they're fine if you go 9-3 and don't make the playoffs at South Carolina. Ole Miss is a more intriguing situation. Lane Kiffin, I think has he won 10 games 3 years in a row, counting bowls? Yes. They have not made a playoff. Now, I think there would be more pressure on Ole Miss if they had like I don't know, let's just pick a number, a $20 million budget for their football players, like some team from Columbus, Ohio did. So there would be pressure there. But I think it depends on the circumstance and the school. I don't think anybody at BYU is going to be mad if they don't make it. I don't think at Arizona State they're going to would be mad if they don't make it. So I just think it depends on the school and their investment in football as to whether or not there's more pressure on that particular coach.
Caleb, I think Lane's invested in football. Layla recently moved to Oxford, so there may be a reuniting of.
Wait, Layla moved back to Oxford? Where did you hear that?
His Instagram account. I'm not going there. This isn't a WAG show, Wives and Girlfriends. We're not doing that, but I'm just saying she moved back to Oxford.
Okay, that might be a topic. Anyways, I'm just saying, did not know that. So
maybe she's got kids there.
She does.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyways, what about, can I take the opposite approach? I think it actually gives coaches more of a, even at the power schools, it actually makes things easier on coaches. And let me just break this down. Let's just take Josh Heupel last year, 2024. Had the college football playoff been 4 teams still and not 12, we would have looked at last year as much more of a disappointment for Tennessee than we do. They get to say we made the college football playoff, even though they wouldn't have made the 14 playoff. Ryan Day would have been fired if there was a 14 playoff last year, honestly. So are we sure that it doesn't do the reverse where a team that's like 12th or 13th that should be 5th or 6th, the coach can be like, hey, I got you guys to the college football playoff. I mean, what more do you want? I mean, could it actually save some jobs just by nature of making a more watered down playoff?
I think you can pick examples either way. So what if Ohio State didn't make the playoff at all and it was 12 teams?
Well,
now you got a bunch of upset people. So I think you can play that one both ways. I do think that Ohio State would not have been in a 14 playoff and they wouldn't have won a national championship. Notre Dame wouldn't have been, probably wouldn't have been in it. Who knows? But I think you can go both ways, Caleb. I think you can cite examples of exactly what you're talking about. And then I think you can cite examples where, hey, Tennessee got in the college football playoff. So they were happy. They were happy about that. They would not have gotten in a 14 playoff. So I think it depends on, I don't know if there are equal number of examples on either side, but I do think there are examples on either side to support both arguments.
Jimmy, I actually think Ole Miss, and I'm not saying this because of the Lane Kiffin tie-in or that Layla has moved back to Oxford, but I think the Ole Miss example is the best one because you are right on the verge of making it. You are a school that has sufficient funding, but not elite funding. So let's just go there. Is Lane Kiffin on the hot seat after winning 10 games 3 years in a row, but not making the college football playoff? I would say absolutely his seat is hotter if there were a 16-team playoff and he hadn't made it as opposed to not.
I would agree with that, in particular over a 3-year period if he didn't make it. Yeah, I would think so too. I think we all agree that the more you win, the more the expectations from the fan base and from boosters. And so if you put yourself in position to be a really good football team, which Ole Miss has done under Kiffin, then the expectation has risen from we're okay with 8 wins to we want you in a 16-team playoff. So, yeah, I do think there would be disappointment in Oxford if Lane Kiffin over the first, let's say the first 2 years of a 16-team playoff, if he doesn't make it, there will be a lot of disappointment in Ole Miss.
So let's go to the lower level schools to a certain degree. Let's think of something like Paul Feinbaum just referred to them as spiraling out of control. Let's take a Kentucky. Mark Stoops, I think, has a sweet gig there. I mean, it's like he's getting paid, no pressure whatsoever. Just get your 6 wins, maybe 3 out of every 4 years, and you're good. Do you think this expanded playoff, though, will create an expectation from Kentucky fans to say, okay, we don't expect to make it most years, but maybe once every 6 or 7 years, we should be able to sneak into the playoff if they're a 16 team?
Yeah, because he had 2 10-win seasons in a 4-year period, which is rare. I bet he was one of the few in Lexington that wanted John Calipari to stay around because the bullets were firing at Calipari and not at Stoops. So they were mad at him and finally ran him out of town. But those folks in Lexington don't feel the same way about Mark Pope, at least not yet, than they did Calipari. But, yeah, I do think that with Stoops, there are greater expectations. And so now he had an awful year this past year, and he typically has done a pretty good job at Kentucky. But if he turns in 6, 7-win seasons over a 2 or 3 year period, I think there's a good chance that he would be fired.
That's
Pretty
intriguing.
Yeah, I think that Ole Miss is a better example of the Kentucky because I think that Ole Miss has better funding in football.
Ole Miss would be expected to make it. Sorry, Jimmy, but yeah.
No, go ahead, Jimmy.
So you're saying that Ole Miss has better funding than Kentucky, therefore the expectations of Kentucky are not as great. I'm gonna still go back to this. Kentucky's had 2 10-win seasons in a 4-year period under Stoops before the bottom fell out. And so I do think there's an expectation. You know how much he's making? $9 million. So if you're going to make that kind of money and you accept that kind of money, which I would accept it too, then the expectations are greater. They're greater than winning 6 or 7 games in a year or even 8, I think, even at Kentucky. And it's made it harder for Kentucky because Texas and Oklahoma are in the league, and there are a whole lot of really good football teams in the league. It's also stunning to look back and see the Kentucky won at Ole Miss. Almost as stunning as Michigan beating Ohio State.
No, fair enough. All right, let me share this with you, Jimmy, and I'm sure you'll appreciate it, and then we'll let you out of here. There you go. See, Lane and Layla back again. I know you were concerned, and you texted me late last night. What's the deal with them? Are they back together again? It appears that they're doing quite well.
I couldn't sleep last night thinking about that.
How would you feel if you're Lane Kiffin's current girlfriend, wife, partner, whatever she is?
I think you feel fine as long as the check's cleared.
Oh gosh.
What? It's awful. Take that down. I can't take it down on my end. No.
My gosh.
No, I mean, I'm just saying.
I'm going to go back to this. Maybe they have a couple of kids that are in Oxford. I think Knox lives there, right?
Yes.
So,
but he changed his name to Ox.
Jimmy.
A lot of people don't know that.
For the sake of your life's on the line, and you either have to get in a car with Lane Kiffin or on a motorcycle with Bobby Petrino. Which one are you doing?
Say that again about Lane Kiffin.
Your life is on the line. You either have to get in a car that Lane Kiffin is driving or a motorcycle that Bobby Petrino is driving.
I'm taking the car.
You're taking the car.
Petrino got in a wreck.
So did Kiffin.
What did you think, Jimmy?
That's how he got in trouble.
What did you think? Because we weren't working directly together at the time when Lane Kiffin named his son Knox when he lived in Knoxville, and he tried to tell everybody that would listen that it wasn't because of that.
Yeah, he did say that. I think it would. Gosh, what if he'd have been coaching in Pullman? What would his son? My son is Pull. Yeah. Ypsilanti. Hey, I've named him Yipsy, but had nothing to do with being up in Michigan. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's no evidence that that's a family name, is there?
No, I think they tried to Yeah, it came from a soap opera or something?
No, the pretext was Layla was a big fan of Brad and Angelina, the couple, and they named one of their kids Knox. That was the pretext of it at the time. On just a random question, I don't think I've ever asked you this, Jimmy, though. Do you think, because I know he was maybe a little too young for the job when he took it in 2008, but do you think Lane Kiffin would have worked out at Tennessee, or do you think he would have gotten in trouble?
I think he'd have gotten in trouble. I think he was too young and too immature. And here's part of my reasoning. Southern Cal, I mean, honestly, at that time was a better job than Tennessee, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he got fired at Southern Cal. Now, I know his argument is, well, they had a lot of scholarship reductions. But here's my argument against that. He had at least 60 or 65 players, right? If my 60 are better than your 60, I should beat you. If my 60 are better than Oregon State or Washington State or UCLA or anybody else, I should beat you. So I thought his excuse about having a limited number on his roster was not a good one, because I think his 60 best players were better than most. Maybe it wasn't as good as Oregon. Okay, maybe not. But his best 60 were better than others, and he couldn't get it done. So if he couldn't get it done at Southern Cal at that time, I don't think he'd have got it done at Tennessee. And oh, by the way, that recruiting class in 2009, his first class, it was ranked, number 3 in the country? If you go back and look at it, it's one of the most overrated classes in Tennessee history.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I know a lot of them left because he left. I get that. But that class was not very good. I think at the end of that tenure, there were 2 players that were still there after Kiffin left that were part of that recruiting class.
Yeah, it was bad. There is a Hooker, Oklahoma. So if he'd have been born there, he could be Hooker, which that'd work out pretty good, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
If I had a kid there, Hooker.
Yeah.
Jimmy, we appreciate you more than you know. Have a blessed day in the snow and a great rest of the week.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Caleb.
Jimmy. Nice enough to join us. Yeah, there's a couple of weird names out there. There's a China, Texas. Would you name China? There's a Pink. There's a Colon, Michigan. Did you name it Colon Kiffin?
Colon. I mean, there's also, the favorite is Bucksnort, Tennessee. When I tell people there's a Bucksnort, and they're like, what? I'm like, oh, yeah, there's a Bucksnort in Tennessee.
There's a Climax, Michigan.
Hooker Climax.
There's a Three-Way, Tennessee.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know about that. There's a Coward, South Carolina. So that's pretty good.
I would say put a strip club in Three-Way, Tennessee, but unfortunately, Tennessee's got that stupid law now where strippers have to cover up, which, it's
how do you know about that law? How do you possibly know about that law?
I don't know how I know about that law. Someone told me about it.
I've actually driven by this place. There's a 96 California or 96 South Carolina, which just don't go in reverse. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, the largest volume dealer in East Tennessee. They're absolutely unbelievable. Parkside Drive and Kingston Pike. Stay tuned. More coming up. We'll be right back with a topic that you're not going to want to miss out on, and that is the gap between the men's and women's basketball program and their national championship odds have changed significantly in Vegas. We'll tell you why off the Hook Sports.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
A guy with a lot of jobs, but this one is the most important.
This is not government work. As such, I treat it with care and attention.
Until someone else calls. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
The message board's lit today. You guys are working together to gracefully toe the line of decorum. Which oftentimes means the best humor. And Derek pointed out there's a city in Canada named Swastika, Canada. We're talking about strange names of cities. So if Lane Kiffin coached a team there and had a kid, would he just name it Swas? Surely not. Is there really a swastika, Canada? And then David chiming in, saying that hopefully they don't have a town flag. Don't you have to change that name? I mean, you get into all the tradition and stuff, and they may say that swastika, they named it, and had nothing to do with Nazis, but I think you have to change that name. That's just me.
You probably do. So, like, it makes sense because Canada.
Okay. That makes
Canada has ties to Eurasia and the Russian territories. A lot of people immigrated from Russia over to Canada, like crossed that bridge, like the Alaska Strait Bridge, I guess. But anyways, point B, the swastika is an old ancient Eurasian sign that, yes, then got used by the Nazis. And because of the way the Nazis used it, you probably shouldn't use it anymore because that's what it's going to be affiliated with for the rest of time. Sorry, I don't care what it meant before.
You could argue it's the best branding in the history of marketing because you can't use a swastika anywhere else anymore.
That's true.
I mean, you can't up and say we're going to be Off the Hook Sports and we're going to use this.
So what you're saying is committed genocide in the name of a symbol, and then that symbol will be forever affiliated with you. That's, you know what? If you want to hijack a symbol for yourself,
there may be a Mussolini flag out there. I don't know, but I do know the swastika. That's a whole different level of branding.
Yes. And yes, Nathaniel, the Bering Strait. I don't know why I couldn't figure out the name of the strait that people crossed over to get to Alaska from Russia.
That's where Sarah Palin lived, right?
She could see Russia from her house.
Yeah. Strangest thing ever. And John Adams can attest to this. We were doing a remote from an ink cartridge place. And this is before she was a presidential candidate. And somebody walks in and looks exactly like Sarah Palin. Okay. But we're on the air, so we can't talk to her. So during the break, I take my headphones off. She drives off. I kid you not. Her license plate was from Alaska. So I went and asked the owner of the store. I said, was that Sarah Palin? She said, no. That's the end of the story.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
What's our stat of the day, Caleb?
On Tuesday, Tennessee beat UNC Asheville in baseball 29-4. And there's a new Dalton on campus, Dave. And his name is Dalton Bargo.
Pain don't hurt.
He just became.
You know what that's from?
No.
Okay. Whoever can name that first gets a prize.
Well, Dalton Bargo.
Pain don't hurt Dalton. What movie is that from?
I don't know.
Okay, go ahead, Caleb.
He became the 4th player ever in the history of the program to hit 2 home runs, not in a single game, Dave. He hit him in a single inning. Joining Luke Lipsius in 2022 against Notre Dame, Kelly Edmondson in 2006 against Belmont, and Sonny Cortez in 1998 against NC State. But yes, he hit 2 home runs in an inning on Tuesday.
It's hard to do just to get that rotation to be able to pull that off. All right, so I want to turn to the gap between the men's and women's basketball program and their national title odds are shrinking. And Caleb explained this to me, and I see out there, Joe Vol, we will get you a no, Joe Vol wasn't the first. All right, go ahead. Caleb, explain this to me. What's going on?
All right, so here's the story, and this is an intriguing one. And for those of us who like to bet, we were looking on the odds yesterday, and we noticed something that was intriguing. The odds for the men's Tennessee basketball program to win the national title are not as significantly higher than they are for the women anymore. So when SEC play began, the Lady Vols were at 500 to 1 to win the national title. The men's team was at 12 to 1 to win the national title. Well, Tennessee on the men's side has dropped to 18 to 1 to win the national title. Meanwhile, the Lady Vols, their odds have improved from 500 to 1, Dave, all the way up to 75 to 1. So both are now within 100 to 1 odds. And the men's Vols are only just above 4 times better than the Lady Vols odds, mathematically, if you really think about it. So things are getting narrower and narrower, to the point that it wouldn't be shocking if those odds become almost interchangeable at the start of the NCAA tournament for both programs.
Okay, is that more an indictment of Rick Barnes and or his players, or is that more a commendation of what they're doing with the Lady Vols?
I think it's what they're doing with the Lady Vols. I think the odds for Rick Barnes and his players were based on people not paying attention. Vegas wasn't paying as much attention as they should have to Tennessee's schedule in non-conference play. And this is not Barnes' fault, but Tennessee ended up having a very easy non-conference schedule because teams that they scheduled turned out to be really, really bad when they thought they'd be really good. So when SEC play came, they were naturally going to collapse a little bit. So the fact that the odds have only gone from 12 to 18 to 1 actually is kind of impressive for Rick Barnes. Going from 500 to 75 is incredible. And the one that stands out, what's really helped in this is UConn. Tennessee beating UConn was a huge program-defining win for Tennessee. That win, Dave, was to the Lady Vols what the football program's win over Alabama was in 2022. It was on that level relative to the Lady Vols as a program, beating UConn a couple of weeks ago.
Bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank. At the current odds, what is the better value bet? Bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC. Life made better. It's where I bank. It's where you should bank. Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
All right, Caleb, which is the better odds? You're the gambling guy. By the way, if you want to post a super chat, it will go to Quincy Calhoun's college fund, and hopefully Caleb won't gamble that away. Also, if you want to join, we'll give away that John Henderson helmet later this week, Friday, as a matter of fact. You can join for just $4.99, and you will get a Hound Dogs gift certificate, and we're going to discuss and announce increased relationship with Hound Dogs that we're super excited about. So, Caleb, what are the odds, and who would you bet on?
So, Lady Vols are 75 to 1, and the men are 18 to 1. And the lady okay, everything being equal, if they had the same odds, the men are a better bet to win the national title than the Lady Vols. They just are. However, at those odds, I'm taking the Lady Vols. This is a different Lady Vols team than the one that lost 3 straight to Vanderbilt, Texas, and South Carolina, and even different from the one that lost to Oklahoma and LSU. They've won 4 of 5. Their only loss, Dave, is by 5 on the road to LSU, one of the premier programs in women's college basketball. I'm just going to say this. Here's my hot take. The Lady Vols, in the early tenure Ken Caldwell, in the early part of the season and through most of SEC play, we were saying they look good. They're a good team. They're not there yet. They can't compete with the South Carolinas and those schools. I'm not saying that now. I'm saying they are on the exact same level as every one of the best schools in women's college basketball right now. Okay, because that UConn win and barely losing to LSU, when UConn just went on the road to beat South Carolina by nearly 30, this team has clicked. Something's clicked with this team, and they're rolling right now. And they're not even on the same. The Lady Vols are rolling, and they're not even at the level they could be recruiting wise. So I'm not even talking about the future. Just this year, I talked Sweet 16 and they could get bounced out, but look, it's not crazy to think Final Four for this team if they get the right draw in the NCAA tournament.
Well, that would be huge for Tennessee. And let's not start this or continue it, even though I'm going to start it. And that is this. Caleb, the comparisons between Pat Summitt and Kim Caldwell, if she has success, are going to come. They are, if she has success. And I heard something this morning, and I was getting ready to listen to John Wilkerson on the Sports Animal, and they run the Ball Network Notebook. And she said something, I thought they played a quote from her that was so insightful. And it was, she was staying ahead of her team and its motivation. She said, we're coming upon the time of year where there's only a couple of Monday practices left. There's only a couple of home games left. There's only a couple of games, and then suddenly it's gone. So for those seniors, this is the time to do it. And I just thought that reminded me so much. I don't want to go over the top here, but it reminded me so much of when covering Pat Summitt. She always seemed to be a step ahead of her players potentially stumbling from a motivational standpoint. And how many times over her 20-plus year career did the Lady Vols come out not prepared emotionally, not prepared to go? Not very often.
No, they rarely weren't motivated. And as what was it Nick Saban said? The problem with the human condition is the humans are evolved to survive, not thrive. And he said that's always was his biggest fight with Alabama players is you rest on your laurels. That's what you do as a human by human nature, is that once you do something, you kind of rest on it. It's hard to keep the motivation to stay great. It's what was it Bobby Knight said? Bobby Knight said the greatest enemy of a great team is human nature. And you're fighting human nature. As a coach, you're fighting human nature every day because you got to keep people motivated. And I think I agree. It's great. I didn't even know she had that quote, but you can tell with Kim Caldwell, she wants to deliver for these seniors in the program and these veterans that stay for her. And she wants to try to deliver for them on that front. And even though she's got her players coming in next year, they're going to be better. I think overall you see a very strong sense of, look, she's at the point already where she's upset when she's not winning a game. Yep. And that's so different from, I don't know if you know this, but when I was covering Jeremy Pruitt in 2018, during halftime of the Alabama game that year, Dave, I don't know if you ever knew this, but like he basically went and told a reporter, like, this is the worst team I'm ever going to have. And then he told players in the locker room, some of y'all aren't going to be playing next year the way you're playing right now once we get our guys in. I'm like, I get it. That's probably true, but you should never tell your team that, right?
No, and it reminds me of me asking, remember Steve Caldwell, longtime defensive ends coach. Yeah. They had the #1 class in the nation, and I thought this would be a good angle to go at. I said, just bringing in the #1 class. This was shortly after signing day. And I said that, does that motivate your guys? And he goes, no, that's a little weird, isn't it? I mean, because those guys are already here. So that should motivate. You should be motivated just by being better. And that to me was the way Kim Caldwell looked at it, and not the way apparently Jeremy Pruitt looked at it. He just didn't seem so bright. Now, this quote from, let me read this. General Ursa says, I don't like the comparisons either, but I will admit there at times she does remind me of Pat. But no matter who holds the job or how successful they are, the Pat shadow will be cast over them. Yeah, it will. And maybe that's the ultimate antidote to the human condition is she's probably not going to win 7 like Pat, right?
8. Pat won 8.
Excuse me, 8. So maybe you're forever motivated, even if you got 3 in the bank.
No, that's true. I mean, like, look, I've always wondered what it is in like a guy like Nick Saban that keeps you hungry, or a guy like Michael Jordan that could three-peat, or a guy like, I mean, I think of Dave, I know you're a Celtics fan, the 60s Celtics. How do you stay motivated to win 11 straight and not get, to quote our president, not get sick of winning? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, it's hard to not get sick of winning. And I think that it becomes that's just a thing in life. Now, look, we're talking about this at the same time. I don't think Rick Barnes is not great at motivating his players or things like that. I don't know. You know, I think over the years, Rick Barnes,
I think he can be overbearing.
I think he drains you. That's the thing. Yeah, he drains you. He drains you. He doesn't. Rick Barnes isn't the best at. He develops you well. He coaches you hard, but he doesn't know how to psychologically get you into the right headspace sometimes when the NCAA tournament comes.
I agree. The Hemp House, a premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. That's hooked for 10% off. Want to also remind you that portions of the program are brought to you by our fantastic friends at Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
So let me ask you this. What are now fair expectations? Because you said Final Four is possible, but I like the way you phrase it. You didn't say expected. I still think fair expectations, and I said this within the first 10 games of the season, so it wasn't my preseason expectation, but after I saw what she was doing and how she was going to do it, I think Sweet 16 is fair.
Yeah, I think Sweet 16 is fair. And I think anything after that is icing on the cake. But I do think that it is those things are possible, icing on the cake. So we're just going to have to see where that goes. It's not crazy to think that they do something that they go further now, because I mean they're peaking at just the right time. I mean, I'm talking to myself. If you ask me Final Four or national, Final Four for the men or the women, I'm having a hard time telling myself why the men would have a better chance at the Final Four. Does that make sense? I'm kind of having a hard time telling myself. I just don't know. I don't know how true that is.
I don't believe in Tennessee's men basketball players as much as the women. From just watching them, eye test, unfair, right? And I'm the eye test guy, and you say that's unfair, and you're right 90% of the time. But I just see there's more of a wilt factor with the men than the women.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're probably right.
If the Lady Vols get beat in the NCAA tournament, I believe they're going to get outplayed. I think there's a good chance the men's team could show up in the first 5 or 10 minutes, realize they've got a tussle in their hands, and get blown out. When it comes to car care, if you're in Knoxville, Joe Newbert Collision Center. Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. He is awesome. Check him out. Jeff is fantastic at Newbert Collision Center. If you're in Chattanooga, Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Stop by and tell Bo that Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports said hello. So let me ask you the same question about the guys. What are the fair expectations for them?
I think Final Four or national title is still a fair expectation. I think they're at a level where you would expect that to happen, if I'm just being honest.
See, after watching them, I don't. They should be at a level in Rick Barnes' what? 6th year? What year is it? They should be at that level, but I don't think they are. Not with this assemblage of talent they have right now. I would be stunned.
But that's the thing, the expectation. Well, they are capable. Certain players are not reaching that level. And look, Darlington Dubar, I thought he was just going to straight up replace Dalton Connect, and boy, was I wrong on that. It's just there are some issues with Rick Barnes and the way things have been handled. And I kind of look at it now, and I think, maybe they'll get it right. I think sometimes Barnes coaches way too much based on principle too, and not like, actually what should be done in March. I thought he would change that a little bit, but look, we're still talking. I mean, it's mid-February. We still don't know exactly what his strategy is for the NCAA tournament. He could end up doing something different.
And I'll tell you what, Steve absolutely encapsulates this conversation for the better part of an hour. Contenders in 4 sports, life is good in Knoxville. So no matter what happens in the NCAA tournament or the College Football World Series or the College Football Playoff, you're a contender. And that's pretty impressive. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. He's very impressive in the courtroom. And we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer when it comes to Ford and Lincoln. They perfected the buying experience. They're absolutely fantastic. You have got to check them out on Parkside Drive or on Kingston Pike. You can go to tedrussellford.net or tedrusselllincoln.net. You'll absolutely love them. Your super dealer.
Like a blast from the past, the super dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The super dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American made. Ted Russell Ford is your super dealer, just in time for truck month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford.
Thursday on the program, we'll talk some hoops for Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Again, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's